Praise be Jesus Christ, now and forever. Just a word of thanks for everyone who participated in our Nazarene International Day of Prayer last week on the Feast of St. Charbel for the persecuted. You can still download the prayer cards and continue to pray, please God, every day for our persecuted brethren. Today I'm giving you a slightly shorter version of a piece I wrote recently for the Catholic Thing, containing a few ideas, some of which you've heard before, but as a hopefully semi-coherent whole. Familiarity, as the old phrase goes, breeds contempt, but Chesterton, writing more than 80 years ago, spoke of the fatigue of familiarity, writing in a time when, even if there may not have been widespread practice of the faith, in Britain certainly, there would have been amongst anyone with a modicum of education, indeed even with an elementary school education, a widespread knowledge of the simple facts of the Christian faith. As the American novelist John Dos Passos wrote, the constant reading of the Bible in hundreds of thousands of humble families kept a basic floor of literacy under language as a whole and under the English language. Chesterton's point, then, in what he called the specially Christian case, is that the near impossibility of making what he said the facts vivid, because the facts are familiar, and for fallen man it is often true that familiarity is fatigue. He continued that if Christ were presented as a Chinese hero, in other words as an esoteric figure, then he would probably catch the popular imagination. That familiarity with the Christian faith simply doesn't exist anymore. It's not just in Britain, but across the Western world, as 3 or 4 generations have been successfully educated into ignorance, not only of the foundation of Western civilization, which is Christianity, but of the works of literature, music, and art, which are the products of that civilization. Quotations from the Bible or Shakespeare, the knowledge of which could be assumed in the time of Chesterton was writing, are now as unfamiliar as Sanskrit verse. To speak of seeing through a glass darkly or the blind leading the blind will not register with the product of 4 years of expensive brain deprivation known as a bachelor's degree. This is all, however, not to be seen as an obstacle, rather a magnificent opportunity, indeed a moment of providence. The Catholic sociologist Professor Stephen Bullivant has spoken of the need for a herd immunity to the gospel before the faith can once again be proclaimed with the chance of success. Unless I'm understanding this incorrectly, it seems to be exactly the other way around. The masses, particularly the young, are not immune to a gospel they've never heard. They are ripe for infection. As St. Paul walked into the Areopagus, where the Acts of the Apostles tells us people did nothing except telling or hearing something new, so in this new Areopagus moment, the gospel, ever ancient and ever new, can ignite the same fire for a surprisingly similar group of people, divided by time but not by desire. It's true that many, as at that time, will mock, but others will and are saying, "We will hear you again about this." We know at that moment a Dionysius and a woman named Damaris were converted by Paul's preaching of the word to them, the Kerygma. Today there's not just one Damaris and one Dionysius, their name is Legion. With this providential moment, in a world killing at the beginning and end of life, where teenage suicides are at an all-time high, and as T.S. Eliot said, an attempt is being made to form a civilized but non-Christian morality, an attempt, he said, which would ultimately fail. The freshness of a gospel, good news of life after death, of the meaning, the true meaning of what a human is, man and woman created in the image and likeness of God, of the incarnation and the resurrection, will in fact be the inoculation against despair for modern man. Now is the time, as St. John Paul used to say, for the Church to propose, not impose, the message of hope, and once again in a post-Christian and post-modern society to capture hearts and minds eager and waiting for liberation from death and despair. Brethren, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, like a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour.